What if I told you your joint pain might actually be a digestive problem, or that your gallbladder, or lack thereof, is quietly triggering inflammation in your knees, your back, or your hands? Sounds crazy, right? But science and ancient wisdom agree. When bile flow gets blocked, pain shows up in the most unexpected places. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how poor gallbladder function or gallbladder removal can set the stage for arthritis, autoimmune flares, and chronic pain. If you've ever struggled with bloating and body aches, this episode is for you. Grab your dandelion tea and let's get to it.
Gallbladder gone. Now what? Let's heal from the inside out.
Welcome to Gallbladder Gone? Now what? The podcast for Christian women navigating life after gallbladder removal. Hosted by Jamie McCrivy, holistic nutritionist, wife, boy mum, grandma, and a firm believer in God's design for lasting health. Did you know that over 1.2 million Americans have their gallbladders removed every year, and that the majority of them are women? Even more eye-opening is that all gallbladder issues are digestive issues. And poor digestion is at the root of up to 80% of all disease, including hormone imbalances and weight struggles. While Jamie isn't a doctor and this podcast isn't medical advice, she shares real solutions rooted in research, experience, and God's Word. Let's get practical, biblical, and real, one step at a time.
Welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back here on episode 18, How the Gallbladder Can Trigger Arthritis, Inflammation, and Pain. I really love this episode and what's coming up. So many years ago, a client of mine, and we'll just call her Lisa, came to me incredibly frustrated. She had just turned 50 and was eating cleaner than ever. She was taking turmeric, she was stretching, she was doing chair yoga, but her joints still ached, like she'd run a marathon in high heels. Her knees cracked every time she stood up, and her fingers felt like they belonged to her grandma. But here's the kicker. She had her gallbladder removed 15 years before and never connected the dots. So it turns out it wasn't just her getting older or wear and tear. Her body was quietly starving for fat soluble nutrients and power that was missing. Detox power that was missing in her gallbladder because it was now gone. So once we started supporting her bile and digestion, the pain began to ease. The pain that nothing else had been able to help started to fade, started to ease. And this is when I knew that there was a connection. And then this is something women needed to understand. So, as we know, most gallbladders that are removed, over 60 to 70% are women. And we're just kind of told after surgery. In fact, sometimes we're told don't eat fat, right? Or go on a low fat diet. So, let's talk about why this might be counterproductive. So, before we get there, I just wanted to start with how I started going down this path. So, as a person who was you going through all this digestive disease and that led to all these other aches and pains and foggy brain and fatigue and all of this, I was really frustrated that this was my life. This is I felt like this wasn't fair. And so I started really searching in the scriptures. And what I found brought me such peace. So I started to understand that God's design is not suffering. In fact, he says in John 10:10, the thief cometh not, but to steal, to kill, and destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. God has given us these amazing tools and supports and allies to help us feel better, that suffering is optional. And so I wanted to tell you that to give you hope. if you're one of those that is struggling or has struggled or knows someone who's struggling, we have health laws that, when obeyed, the body comes into this beautiful state of balance. And then we can add supportive allies and herbs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Why, when the gallbladder stops functioning or we get it removed, it can cause arthritis and chronic pain. So when the gallbladder goes, often, even before then, so does fat absorption. And so we can see that sometimes even in the toilet. I noticed when I would go to the bathroom that I would see oil in the toilet. So I know my body wasn't absorbing it. And I even went to my doctors. I even saw it in my urine. And oh, it's normal, it's normal. Are you telling me oil coming out of my urine, let alone out of in my bowel movements, was normal? And it's not. And so what happens is when we don't absorb fat, that fat is our joint protection. And so without a gallbladder, we know the bile trickles from the liver because the liver creates the bile. The bile is not the gallbladder. All it does, not all it does an amazing job of concentrating that bile and then holding it until we eat and then squirting it, right? So now once we get rid of the gallbladder, now we just have this constant trickle that isn't being strategically released during meals. So what this does is it disrupts fat digestion and can lead to deficiencies in vitamins A, D, E, and K, and omegas. All of these are fat soluble vitamins. That means they're in fat. And so, we have water soluble vitamins. We're fine on those usually. We have vitamin C, but even sometimes we get a little bit low on B's, and we'll talk about that in another episode. But nutrients that literally lubricate our joints and calm inflammation are now we are now deficient in and we're not absorbing. So what do we do about that? So we've talked a lot about the bile support with ox biles and bitters. One of the things I've really been enjoying lately is lecithin. And and that has really been helpful. And it has no flavor. I actually put it in our supplement link in the show notes. And just so everybody knows, I put it, I signed up with FullScript so I could give clients 10% discount. So when you go there, you get high quality products, but you also get a discount. So that's why I put it in there. So one of my favorites, I love ox bile, and so that's in there, and I love bitters. But this lecithin I've really been enjoying taking with my meals. It has no taste. I believe I put capsule version in. But go ahead and try that and see if that will help emulsify the fat that you're eating and make it more easily digestible, because bile doesn't necessarily emulsify. And so we want to kind of come at it from both ways, taking our enzymes and making sure that we're getting absorption. All right, the number two reason gallbladder function and arthritis and chronic pain can happen is there is a toxic buildup and pain sets in. So bile isn't just for digestion, it's your liver's garbage truck, and it also lubricates the colon. So that's why some people can either get diarrhea or constipation. So without it flowing properly, the toxins can recycle back into the bloodstream, and this drives systemic, that means a whole body, right? Systemic inflammation. And what this can do is cause or add to autoimmune flares. And so oftentimes people who've had gallbladders out will eventually get an autoimmune disease. And so I'm gonna talk about that on coming up on how to um, reduce the effects of that. And I am of the camp that when people say autoimmune can't be healed, that is a lie. So don't give in to that. It is now being healed by many doctors, and it's not just in remission, it's gone. And so if you have an autoimmune disease, you can be healed from it. So just know that, and that there's plenty of scientific and anecdotal evidence of this. So when what we want to do is we want to open up those toxic those detox pathways again. And there may be additional information here. And again, I'm also upcoming is going to be a podcast about those over 50 to 60% of people have the MTHFR gene mutation that can also play a role in this. But again, completely managed by diet and lifestyle and doesn't need to be a struggle, and we don't have to get these autoimmune flares. So, what we can do for that toxic buildup and to reduce that pain is number one, try castor oil packs. I love castor oil packs, and I have a link of that in the show notes. And then lecithin, it again shows up, and that's why I'm doing more experiments with this. It's a newer supplement for me. Been a couple months, about a year that I've been experimenting with this and finding a lot of good results. And then there's some daily things that we can do that are kind of detox rituals. So we could take things like Triphala, and again, I have that in my store for the supplements. That kind of it's a gentle detox, and people will take it in the evenings. And we could do things like saunas or dry brushing and get things kind of moving. Warm lemon water in the morning also will start to flush the body out. So making sure we're drinking lots of water. And I tell people, I go back and forth because there's a lot of information. You should have a gallon of water a day. But for those who have kapha imbalances or kapha body types that hold on to water, that they can get really waterlogged. I like to look at the urine. So the urine should be a very, very light yellow and should not smell. And so I kind of gauge my hydration based off of that. Not the first pee in the morning because that's going to be dehydrated because you haven't drank for all night and then your body's been in cleaning mode. But throughout the day, if you have dark yellow, and this is if you're not taking B vitamins. If you're taking B vitamins, it's going to be neon yellow. But you can kind of gauge there. Make sure that you're drinking a lot of water, that you're moving, that you're going on walks, that, keeping the body moving and the lymph moving so that there's none of this toxic buildup. All right. The third reason is that our gut microbiome suffers, and this can play havoc on our joints. So, bile helps control bacteria in the small intestines. So, when we have poor bile flow, and I've done a whole podcast on this, you're more likely to develop SIBO or leaky gut. So, both of which let this immune triggering toxins leak into your system and settle in the joints. And so, again, super important to keep this bacteria under control, which means that our digestion nice and strong. That Agni, that fire, is going to be incredibly important. So one of my favorite ways to do this, and again, I put this in the cart for the supplements, is something called CCFT, and that stands for cumin, coriander, and fennel tea. And we do this after meals or in between meals. And it does a few things. So, first, it stimulates bile flow, even without a gallbladder. So, we're getting that moving out of the liver. The second thing it does is it relieves gas, bloating, and indigestion. And for those of us who suffer with that, that is such a blessing and a gift. And the third thing is that it improves nutrient absorption, and that, again, for those of us who don't have a gallbladder or who have sluggish livers or stopped up gallbladders, this is going to be really, really important. The next thing it does is it balances Vata and Pitta. And so and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite teas, but it also supports a gentle detox without harsh laxative. So it kind of just gets things moving. And it's so easy to make. What I do, I have a little instant pot. And even when I had my big instant pot, what I would do is I'd put like a quart of water, 4 or 5 cups in the instant pot. And then I would put about a tablespoon of the CCFT and I would pressure cook it for 10 minutes. And oh my goodness, I just think it's so delicious. And just kind of make it part of my day. So you can, after that, you strain it and you sip it warm throughout the day, especially between meals and with fatty meals. So those without a gallbladder can also add to those seeds just a slice of fresh ginger to kind of further support bile and enzyme relief. And it's just a really tasty addition to our everyday support system. All right, the fourth thing that can cause arthritis and chronic pain is as we're not as our digestion is suffering, that it can imbalance or weaken the bones and nerves. So, according to Ayurveda, when bile stagnates, toxins, which we call ama, lodge in the joints and nerves, and especially if the vata is elevated. And so that's when we start to hear things like cracking joints and feel really stiff and this like nerve pain and early degeneration. Um, and so I've even had clients come in and it's almost like they're wasting a little bit. And so this is where we really, really want to balance vata. And remember, Vata is like winter. It's cold, it's dry, it's windy, you know. So things like cracking joints, dry skin, dry hair, constipation, those are some signs of Vata imbalance. So what we want to do is eat warm, oily foods and avoid things like crackers that are dry and like popcorn. We want things that are really nourishing, like soups and stews and good fats. And so we're going to be able to digest those fats, right, as we use our herbs and our supports. And then we can use herbs based on your constitution and need like ashwagandha and guggulu and triphala. Out of those, if I were going to choose one, I would choose triphala because, and some people pronounce it triphala. It doesn't matter, but that is a balanced formula, so it really doesn't matter your constitution. So that's triphala kind of goes in any direction. All right, the fifth thing is that fat malabsorption can trigger autoimmunity. Now, remember what I said, autoimmunity is a diagnosis, right? But it's not permanent. So you can heal from autoimmunity. And I know when I say that, a lot of people, I even have clients, and it takes them a while. They almost get angry, like I'm giving them false hope. And I assure you, I am not. You can even look up Dr. Brooke Goldner, and she helps many, many people get over autoimmune disease. She actually wrote a book called Goodbye Autoimmune, and she does this for a living. And she has programs, and I mean, so it's been happening, and she's not the only one. So I know I want you to feel hope and that this can be done. So, vitamin D and omega 3s help regulate our immune system. So, without them, the body can spiral into inflammation and pain. And it can sometimes show up with things like that look like fibromyalgia, arthritis, or even mystery nerve pains. And so there are some daily things that we can do. And Dr. Brooke Goldner talks a lot about this is first, eat freshly milled flax. And so you can put that in your smoothies. You can put it on your salad. You can put it in dressings. And she and her husband suggest even up to like a cup a day. And so that's a lot, and that's a lot of fiber. And I think that's a little too hard for those of us without gallbladders. So we need to start really small and maybe even take a tablespoon of the oil with, some lecithin to help really get the benefits of that. So we also want to monitor our inflammation markers. So don't ignore pain like, oh, I'm just getting older. Um, just because something is common does not make it normal. Pain is not normal. It's a body's cry. It's a symptom. So it's saying something is wrong and I need help. But we've been programmed to think, oh, I'm just getting older. And as you get older, you lose energy, you don't have you have a lot of pain and there's a lot of breakdown and you get arthritis and all of these things. And that is not everybody's experience. So that tells me something. If it's meant to be, it's a capital T truth. It happens to everybody. Like, gravity happens to everybody, but growing older and being in pain and suffering doesn't happen to everybody. It may happen to a good majority, but there are some people who are in their 70s and 80s are feeling great. They're running marathons, they're visiting family, they're serving missions, they're doing all these things. So it doesn't make it capital T truth. It just makes it, someone's experience. So, what I want you to do with this information is that if you've had your gallbladder removed or suspect that it's not working well, don't wait for joint pain to be a symptom. Start supporting your bile flow, start supporting your digestion, start listening to those little signals that your body's giving you that's just saying, hey, I need a little extra support. Will you help me out here? And then give it what it needs. So this can be a game changer for your entire body, especially your joints and nervous system. And so that's all I have for today. But this is what I want you to know is that this is absolutely something you can do. If you want the notes on this podcast, then the links in the bio or the show notes where you can get every single podcast I have. I've created a PDF so you can look through it. It's on an app, the Teachable app. And so all you do is sign in and you have access to all the extras. And I'll be throwing like maybe extra videos in there or recipes as I come along. But there are 3 ways you can get on to your healing journey from here. If you're all of this information comes up and people get this, we call it a paradox of choice where it's like, I have so many choices, I don't even know where to start. Where do I even begin? So, the first thing you can do is you can hop on and purchase my DIY program, and it will walk you through easy peasy all the things you need to do. Then the second option is that you can do a one-on-one 60-minute consultation where I just give you get to know you a little bit, what you're going through, set your feet in the right direction with some practical tools to start incorporating right away. And the third one is that you can purchase the 18-week one-on-one course where you get all the information from the DIY course, all that access, plus 18 different hours or sessions with me where we can work one-on-one and get really, really deep into what you need for your healing journey. So thank you for joining me. And next episode 19, is coming right up. So stay tuned, subscribe, like, so you don't miss anything, and check the show notes for all that information. And the next episode is going to be about are your words making you sick and sabotaging your digestion? And so we're going to dig deep into some of the mental things that actually cause digestion that people don't know about. And it's fairly new information. So I will see you then. Until then, happy digesting.
If this episode encouraged you or offered practical insight, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Leaving a review, subscribing, and sharing with even one friend helps more people discover this message, and Jamie is truly grateful for your support. Be sure to check the show notes for free downloads, helpful resources, and a link to join Jamie's private Facebook group for extra support and community that blends practical health with biblical truth. Just a reminder, Jamie isn't a doctor, so always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health plan.